And it's not at the cost of men. It's in favor of humanity.
Yeah, like we freaking ride at dawn. Let's go. We're all coming together. Get in the minivan because that's what we're doing. Like that's what we're doing now. Okay. Like it just like if we continue to just pull people into our echo chamber, like person by person, then it's no longer an echo chamber. It's just an environment that we've created.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Medeiros.
And I'm Colleen Hungerford. And this is We're Doing This Right, right? Podcast for the whole woman. Mind, body, soul, and business.
It's humor infused, as real as it gets, inspiring, and you'll walk away with real usable tools for life and business.
If you love what you're hearing, please share with a friend, subscribe so you'll never miss an episode, and rate and review whenever you listen.
So find your earbuds, lace up your walking shoes, or cozy up with a beverage of your choice. It's time to dig in. Hey guys, we're doing this right?
Hey Cheryl, how?
Colleen, are you doing it right?
I feel like today I am doing it right. I got up, I like fully did my hair, my makeup, so it's feeling really right today. And you can't see it, but I'm wearing like a red pleated skirt, and it is just really right about this situation today. So usually
it's matching her lips, ladies and gentlemen.
Today I feel great.
She's looking good. Yeah. Well, today we have a really incredible guest that I think is going to inspire the hell out of every single person that listens. Paden Hughes is a speaker, an author, and a success coach, and a podcaster. So her book is called Take Two: How a Simple Daily Habit Increased My Health, Wealth, and Happiness. And then her podcast is called Behind Her Rise, and it has been so fun to listen to. So welcome, Paden.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We are thrilled you're here. You guys will figure this out in about 30 seconds, but Paden is just fucking dynamic, and I love her. So get excited.
Yes, and I love that your book's called Take Two. We're all about like take two, like next step, next chapter. Tell me.
I can't take credit for that title. Yeah. That came from an intuition to reach out randomly to a woman that I have sort of known. And within 30 seconds of having coffee with her, she named the book. And I was like, what? It was so good.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us about, I mean, to me, when we read your bio, there's like so many amazing things. And you've come and spoke to our networking group before, so I know a little bit about you, but you're doing so many of these wonderful things. But what I loved the most was you're a success coach. And I love that it's like a success coach. It's not a business coach. It's not a life coach. It's not and maybe it's all of those things, but like, can you talk to us a little bit about that and how that the work that you're doing? And we talked a little bit before about, you know, women entrepreneurs and women in business. So like, tell us all about that because we want to know everything about you immediately.
I think that if I had to say there's one common thread, because I'm a manifesting generator, and in the human design world, that means I am multi-passionate. You can't tie me down. I am always doing 16 things, and my life works better when I'm doing all of that most of the time. And so if I were to say like there's one theme in my whole life, it has been, how do I create the most success without selling my soul and making myself miserable? And I think that that's what a lot of women who are pioneering, who are trailblazing, like think that's really at our core what we're looking for. Like, yeah, we want success. But I think that inherently women, from the women that I work with and the women that I interview, the way we describe success is different than the way men describe success.
Yes.
Which I think is absolutely powerful. And I don't want to like skip over that. This is why I am so passionate about women rising to all levels of influence without having to kill themselves to get there. Because there's an altruism around women that is really unique. Like, we're not just here to build legacy for our family name or like our posterity where we want to have our kids of $100 million each. Like, that's not what a woman shows up to the scene going, that's what I want. Women want the collective to do better. They want to give back. They want to have freedom. They want to buy back their time. They want to enjoy all the facets of the roles that society and they have decided they will take on in the world. And so for us, it's not just about creating success. It's what does success feel like to each of us? And that's why I talk about myself as a success coach. Because, yeah, I talk about money, I talk about business, I talk about life. Because my thing is, look, ultimately, when success is magnetized to you is when you are in your coherence, meaning that you are your authentic expression of self. And there is nothing more magnetic than looking at someone who is just vibrant and at peace.
Yeah.
I don't know any, like you roll into a networking event and you're like, there's some woman rocking her vibe and she's not stressed. She's in a place of love and acceptance of who she is. And because of that, she's so generous in supporting other women. That's the woman I want to be with. That's the woman we send clients to. That's the woman opportunities flock to. And so that's what I want to coach. I coach women around.
So yesterday, my business partner, Rachel Metzger, sent me this quote. If you're comfortable with yourself and know yourself, you're going to shine and radiate and other people are going to be drawn to you. That was from Dolly Parton. And such compliment. He sent it to me and said, this is you. And that is my definition of success. If I am just able to embody me and be me and own it, great. I've made it. And hopefully there's some income that comes from that.
Yeah.
But at the core, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And we have chatted a lot about, like, you know, I kind of am in a transition with my business where I was on a team and now I'm solo. And what I feel so empowered to be able to just like be myself and be who I want to be. And without these like certain restrictions of like, you know, we were talking about right before, like I'm a mom and I'm never going to apologize for that. And I'm always going to be that. And that is so ingrained and fibered into who I am. But previously or in other professions, that's something that I've had to hide. So I couldn't be genuinely me. Right. Or, you know, they're like, maybe don't wear that really bright red pleated skirt because that's a little bit too much and we don't want too much, you know, but like now that I'm able to just kind of, and I love that you said like chilled, right? Like we're just kind of like relaxed because when we're not, that is that feeling of something being forced or something being unauthentic, but just teach me all the things that you're talking about because that's who I want to be and that's what I want to do.
Okay, so I love energetics, and what we're describing here is the energy of someone who's in their power. And we sometimes, I think, as women, we hear the word power, we think president of the United States, or like we go like to some crazy place of historically masculine power. Yeah. But a woman's power is so magnetic. And I think that for me, a huge evolution for me was really, if I were to chart back, and I document this in my book, but the whole story is like, I was so overly masculine to succeed. I believed that because I would, it's like, what do our kids do when like mom says, good job, they want to do more of that, right? Well, that's still carried into my professional self. When I was told, hey, great job for cutting that business owner off in their pity party and dropping the shit in the conversation and telling them to wake up to their dreams, you were a badass. And I was like, oh, I was a badass. Like, I'm going to do more of that. Right? So then the more you stack on these like expectations of how to be badass, how to demand respect, how to take charge of situations, the more you kind of develop. It's almost like, and I also own a gym. So it's like overdeveloping your biceps, but then like atrophying your butt muscles. Yeah. Right? Like it's like, not to make women the ass of the body, but in a sense, what I feel like what we do is we overdevelop sides of us that the business world historically celebrates. And then we feel like we have to atrophy or leave behind other parts of ourselves. So then we're not integrated.
Yeah.
And they just did a study on what's the highest vibrational frequency in terms of experience. And we would think what would you think is like the highest vibration? If like rejection's like the lowest, what would be like a word that you're like, that would probably be pretty freaking high?
Orgasm.
Ooh, I love that so much.
I'm reading a lot of smut books right now. So
yeah, no, I love it. There's a lot there for women with sexuality. We can get into that for sure, because that's a huge part of our power.
That just feels like my highest vibration,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. What would you say?
I think what we're taught is like validation or recognition, or somebody like saying, or somebody else acknowledging or saying that you are powerful or that you are strong. I think those are the things where like, that's almost like what you're trying, like what you're told, like you're supposed to achieve, is somebody else is supposed to perceive you a certain way. And
or like the slam dunk on the negotiation, like winning, kicking ass on the negotiation, like that high you feel when you have like killed it and crushed it and got what you wanted.
But I think the point there is that you said crushed it. And I think what we are also taught a lot is that it has to be so harsh, and it has to be strong. It has to be intense, and you kind of have to be mean, right? Like what you're talking about. Whereas I look at when I'm trying to negotiate now, because we both work in real estate where there's a lot of negotiations, I approach negotiations like almost like, you're trying to get a drink at a bar. Do you know what I mean? Like where you're like, okay, like how do we make this work for both of us? Like, and how are we doing this way where everybody leaves feeling good about this, but I still got what my client needed, instead of like, I'm going to punish you until I get what my client wants.
So I think what you both kind of said is the highest vibration would be achieving euphoria, would be, I think, more of what Cheryl was saying. And then others I would call to be more of like a sense of job well done and witnessed by others, right? Like a sense of like, it's so powerful that others are in celebration of that. So, and I forget what the name of the study was, but it was so powerful. They were like, okay, rejection we know is like so low, right? Like revenge, like all that is like so dense and so low vibration, right? And then we get into like acceptance and self-knowledge, and that's definitely higher up there, and praise and being witnessed as yourself and not rejected but celebrated. And then they even brought it into, and this is way more kind of Eastern philosophy, which is like love and compassion. And be like, oh, like that's such high frequency. But the recent study actually showed authenticity was higher than love. And I just loved that so much, because it was like, wait a second. That's saying that, like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a ton about brain and heart coherence. When someone is living their truth, when someone's actions match their values, when someone rolls into a negotiation, gets the win-win from a place of centered authenticity and doesn't have a murky like desire to get back at someone, or to, even just like they want this much money because they want more of a down payment for their vacation house. Like, and they just pull that back and go like, what's in the highest and best for who's in front of me, and how are all parties served, and how am I the conduit for that? When we come from that place, we resonate so high. And the theory here is when you are that coherent and you are that dialed in, you are magnetic as fuck. And you're not just magnetic to people, you're magnetic to money, you're magnetic to opportunities, you're magnetic to experiences that make people go, how did that happen in your world? And you're like, I'm just doing me, and I'm doing it really freaking well. And I'm so proud of myself, because no one's celebrated in childhood for being their authentic self. Like, it's just like, I mean, maybe our generation of mothers is really focused on that, but previous generations, it hasn't been the book of knowledge that has been passed to other women. It's been how to get kids that listen the first time, right? Like how to get, and we could go down that road, but you know how it goes. It's like, well, why are we so obsessed with first time obedience? Like, what is that? Like, that's not to me. And like how your child thinks of you as a parent when they're 12 is not where your measure of success is. It's when they're 18. It's when they're 29. It's when they're 36. Are they still saying you are a great parent? So same thing with us, like as we're building and charting success, like what are we focused on? Like, and so many of us have a number.
Yeah.
That's a numerical number that we think this is going to feel really good. Well, success isn't a number, it's a feeling, and everyone's feeling about success is different.
Alex and I have hit our number that we thought would be the place where we were like so fulfilled, and he's more than me, like hitting his head against the wall because it doesn't feel good for him how he got there or what he's living every day. So I'm hiring him a happiness coach, everybody. So we're going to try and
Yeah. Well,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and
shout out to Sky Michaels.
That's amazing. And I think that it's so interesting because when you set those ultimate goals, like where you get there, it's and I relate this to, I never like to make weight loss comparisons, but there's that, right? Like if you're like, if I just lose these 15 pounds, then I'm going to look really good in that bathing suit. And then you do, and you've done it because you've starved yourself and you've done it because you blah, 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 whatever. And then you get there and it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like how you thought it was going to feel. And you've done it in this really awful way. Yeah. And that number doesn't equal happiness is exactly what you're saying, right? Like that doesn't equal success or happiness because you could still.
Yeah, man. When I was doing our taxes, I was not feeling euphoria. When I was like, whoa, look at that. Oh shit, what can I write off? Yeah. Oh God, there's like a whole other set of problems here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't qualify for what anymore? Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Paden, this is something that I genuinely like, because I am on this path towards like not trying to be, but really sitting in who I am authentically and kind of having to peel away like all these things that I've been taught or all these preconceived ideas that I thought were what made a strong businesswoman or whatever. Like I also grew up in the 80s where like strong businesswoman meant something very specific. And when you're doing that, it can I feel very vulnerable, or I feel like, there's people who don't love that. And like, how do you coach to that? Or like, what do we do? Like if somebody's like, I think what you're doing is stupid. And you're like, but this is really who I am, or this is really authentic, or, like, what do we do? How do we keep going?
You're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some of that, right? Like we're taught a lot there's a lot of pocket therapists in my hand, at least when I'm scrolling social media and I'm getting wise every 5 seconds with these like doses of wisdom. And a lot of it is, surround yourself with people who cheer for you. The truth is though, for me, when I was journeying out of, I had a lot of girl boss badges of honor and I was having suicidal thoughts behind closed doors. And the truth is, when I admit that in circles of high-powered women, I am not the only woman. And they're like, girl, I get that. Like everyone thought you built a castle, but you were building a cage for yourself.
Yeah.
And we feel that somewhere inside of us as like who we've had to become to get the things that we thought would create this external validation that it feels super empty inside. It sounds crazy because people go, but you seem like super successful. It's like, I am. But that version of success turns out isn't my version of success. And I'm the one sitting here going, what have I just spent all this time doing? So for me, when I think about, when we're making those shifts and we're in that place of vulnerability and it's grief, because essentially, at least I'm curious how this lands for you, Colleen, but when I was going through and deconstructing who I was fronting as and who I probably even at the time thought was authentic to me.
Sure.
Truly. I mean, what our self-awareness of what's authentic also evolves.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to go, well, like me being a business badass is fucking authentic because I was the bossy girl who was told all the time, be less, be less, be less, be less. And I didn't be less. I just found out how to be less in certain environments to get what I wanted. It was very transactional, very manipulative, very much like, who do I have to be in this moment to succeed? And I'll be that. Well, it's a survival technique. And so what I work with, a lot of the women that I work with go, it's hard to let go of your dysfunction when you're powerful in it. That's a real thing for women. Like a lot of us have been rewarded for showing up in a certain way, being harsh in a negotiation, being not a pushover, right? And as we are probably some equal parts feminist and trying to figure out how to be feminine, right? Like at the same time and be in our power because feminine's so powerful. and we're sitting there deconstructing all of that, there's a lot of grief because who we've had to become required a lot of self-betrayal that we weren't conscious of. It's not like anyone's handing you a menu going, you can either be this and give up these 10 things you love about yourself. Like, no one's doing that. There's no transparency in the journey to who we've had to become. So as we go back, we go, well, when did I stop being kind? That was mine. I asked my dad, how would you describe me as a kid? Because I felt so disconnected from my little self. And he said, there's only one word I would think of, which was kind. And I was like, my God, nobody in my life would describe me as that right now. Super sad moment. And I didn't beat myself up for it. It was like, okay, evidence that I've moved away from who I used to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, it is vulnerable, and it's vulnerable. And I think that in the world of spirituality and healing, there's a lot more openness around these conversations. But in rooms with women who have worked really freaking hard to get a seat at the table and to get into that top tier entrepreneur room, we aren't admitting this stuff. But the thing is as soon as you do, everyone goes, oh, sigh of relief. I'm not the only one. I thought I was broken.
Yeah.
So it's really powerful.
I find that like sometimes as women, we want to support each other and help each other, but there is, and I almost think it's generational, who are like, well, I worked so hard to get here, so you better work that hard to get here, and you better go through the crap that I went through. Otherwise, you haven't earned your seat here. And I think that is so awful. Like, that breaks my heart that people and women, and that we're doing that to that. And it's not all women. And I do think that a lot of it is going away with like women of our generation, because a lot of us want to see each other rise, and we want to see each other succeed and collaborate. But there are still some people out there who are like, since it was so hard for me, it has to be hard for you, or it's not valid, or it's not real. And I'm not going to tell you how to get there. I'm not going to show you what to do. You got to figure it out because I had to figure it out. And I think in this evolution, it's like, how do we get away from those people? How do we get out of those rooms? Because I don't know. I mean, you could tell me, like, I don't know if those women or those people want to change or want to be helped or want to grow in these really like authentic ways. I'm not sure what to do with that.
Well, it's a podcast, right? People can't necessarily see our hands, but raise your hand if you've ever felt like a woman competed with you for a seat at the table.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for sure. We got 2 of 3, so 66% of this dynamic here. Raise your hand if you've ever felt a woman made it possibly harder for you to jump through more holes to get there.
Absolutely.
So we've got 3 out of 3 hands up. And raise your hand now, because this is just me being a nerd. Raise your hand if you felt that your mother or sisters were competitive with you growing up. Okay, so we got 2 out of 3. So what I've done is I've started a research project interviewing the top 2% of female leaders or entrepreneurs, defined, unfortunately, top 2% means 7 figures, which I say unfortunate because if we were to compare that to men, 7 figures would be like the top 80% of entrepreneurs that are men, right? Like, it's very disproportionate.
Yeah.
Part of that's the side hustle world's way of calling us all CEOs and just kind of watering down sometimes what otherwise traditionally we would know, but we'll take it because women are going to take over the world. I really believe that. When it comes to women being in competition with each other, I think for me, and what I've seen in the research is it is so correlated to how your first relationships to the feminine were. How you experienced your mother, how you experienced sisters, aunts, grandmothers, like whoever were the prominent female figures as you were growing up and impressionable, is how you will brace for interactions with other females by nature. And so for us as mothers, the 3 of us being mothers, but anyone listening, if you're not a mother, you're a sister, you're an aunt, you're a friend, like who we are to young people and making space for them and not being in a spirit of competition and not trying to compare them against someone else, even if you don't know that that's causing harm, you're preconditioning these women to go out into the world bracing for someone to compare themselves and measure themselves against you. When your mother is competitive with you and putting you down, every female leader is going to try to take a whack at you. You're just bracing for it. And we know emotional intelligence would say, if you're coming into a room, let's go into a negotiation room, and you're expecting them to try to screw you, what's your energy like walking into that room?
You're braced.
But when you're braced, you're ready for battle, and everyone can feel it, even if they don't have the awareness to know. We're survivors enough as a species to read that energy and get ready for our own battle. So I think there's a lot of women unconsciously going into the world braced for rejection from one another. And this goes really far back. There's research that says you are carrying in your DNA the lived traumas of up to 13 generations back.
Wow.
Which brings us into the witch trials, where women were legitimately told, I will kill your entire family and all of your children unless you turn a sister in. I know that sounds bizarre, but like this is actually, in my opinion, still coloring a lot of our experience with other women.
Sure.
And this went on 13 generations and beyond. They estimate between 1 million and 9 million predominantly females were killed over the course of 2 centuries, wiped out for things that today we would celebrate, things like being an herbalist. So if like you're into doTERRA, you would have been a witch. Like if you talking to your dog because you love your dog and thinks it has a cute personality, witch. Like you're financially independent of a man and you chose not to get married, very problematic. You live outside of like a city and you're more isolated, you're definitely a weirdo, like witch. So many crazy things when you go back into the studies of like what it actually was. People weren't drinking blood out of chalices and being burned on stakes. Like that's not what was happening. It was anyone who was a free thinker who went against what the church said at that time was a problem. And not only that, but if you had an opinion that was yours, and you protected another woman who was getting targeted, the men in your family would try to keep you small and hidden so that you would stay safe. So the masculine has a wound around women being seen as well, because men want to keep women safe in the masculine, and they weren't able to sit 13 generations back. The women they loved were getting hurt, and they couldn't protect them. I happen to believe that that shit is alive in our cells and in our bloodlines, and we're not even aware of how it's showing up.
Yeah.
It's just wild when you go that far back.
I mean, yeah. I mean, and you see it, I mean, like even just, it's interesting. This is a really random reference, but you're talking about the witch trials, and there's a Taylor Swift song where she talks about like, my daughter is about to be 10. And she's like, what are they talking about, Mom? Like burn what? Like what? And I had to have this conversation with her, and it was so interesting. You know, like she's 10 and I've tried so hard to be a good mom to her and like, you know, whatever. But, and she was just like, what are you talking about? Like if they didn't, you know, like if they used herbs and, you know, as medicine that they would be burned or whatever, like, but it's something that happened 13 centuries ago or whatever you're saying, but we still know about it. We still talk about it. It's still prevalent. We're still seeing that in different modern versions every single day, however that is, right? Like however that's being transferred cellularly, generationally, colloquially, like oral history wise, you know, like those things in behaviors are being, I mean, it's very obvious if you're looking.
So in the healing community, a lot of women have thyroid issues.
Yeah.
Thyroid's connected to your throat. Your throat is connected to speaking your truth. I don't know about you, but my entire female side of my bloodline on both sides of my parents have thyroid issues and have trouble speaking their truth. Well, that was probably keeping them alive hundreds of years ago, but no longer is needed to keep us alive. So then the question becomes, what have we inherited as coping mechanisms to stressors or to success? Because the other way this shows up is not just women against women, it's women being afraid to be seen. women being afraid to be visible, women being afraid to use their voice, women being afraid to be powerful. So then that starts affecting female entrepreneurs a lot. Because it's like, how am I in self-sabotage mode right now? How have I inherited ways of minimizing myself so that I stay alive? Which by no means makes any sense really today in this corner of the world where we live. Like, that's not a real thing, but our nervous system doesn't know that. Our subconscious mind doesn't know that. It's been inherited. It's been programmed. So then we have to get radical about how are we, if we're serious about success, how are we serious about healing our nervous system so that we can hold money and not be scared to have money? This is going to sound funny, but because Cheryl already brought up orgasms, we'll just go there. I know women who are just so successful, and they will tell me that they will get a pile of cash and lay on it and have an orgasm on the money so that their nervous system recognizes that it's safe to be around money and feel pleasure.
That sounds nice.
Isn't that funny?
I need to bring a pile of money to bed. Okay, let's shift and talk about how women are going to rule the world, please.
Yeah.
How are we getting there? What are we doing?
So in this age of Aquarius, because I don't know if you can tell, like, I love bringing the esoteric and spiritual into practical means because I believe that's where women have always dominated. In fact, that's why we were targeted that many years ago so systemically. And across many generations, there were women who were just the wise women that men wouldn't go into war until the woman spoke and said, that's when we should go and that's how we should do it.
Yeah.
So deep inside of us are these reservoirs of wisdom that the world has not historically known how to hold and venerate. And so we've been marginalized, we've been cornered, we've been stifled. And as women are coming, I believe, back into what's called the Age of Aquarius, which we just went into an Age of Aquarius for a transit for the next 200 years, it is all about the rise of the feminine. And you can start to see that on social media. We are seeing messages of women speaking each other's names in rooms of opportunity. That's not as taboo as it used to be. We see women celebrating one another, even if they won and they're living a life that you secretly wish and want. We're starting to recognize that competing against each other versus just seeing these women as proof that what we want is possible is changing the conversation around competition and comparison. We're seeing women recognizing that they have an innate knowing that their male counterparts aren't as tapped into. For example, you roll into a negotiation, you roll into an interaction that's charged, there's money on the table, there's emotions in the room, and a woman 9 out of 9 times is going to call where the problem is and who's got the biggest ego that is in the room and how to navigate that. Not navigate it as in like, if we're like thinking in nature, like how we would navigate if there's a boulder and there's a river. Women are the river and we go around the boulder. We figure out a way to just go around it. Men would be like, how do we pick up the boulder and just move it? It's like, well, that doesn't work all the time. Women have a totally different way of engaging in the world. We're starting to see this when Harvard Business Review did a study that said that emotional intelligence is a far bigger indicator of professional success and leadership than intelligence. So we're seeing, and emotional intelligence lives in the feminine. Like, we know this. We know how to read who's lying.
Yeah.
Like, women are just lie detectors pretty much rolling around. Well, you throw that plus able to perceive what's not being said, what's being felt, what they know to be true, even if they can't describe it. So 82% of the female entrepreneurs that I interview said that they 1000%, when they look at if they were to reverse engineer their road to success, it was they ran on their intuition when people said it wouldn't make sense. They said, I don't care. I know it's right. And I know what I know, and I can't describe how I know it, but I know it. And every time I do what I know, it works out for me. That is unheard of in masculine business school, where prevailing logic and data and reverse engineering everything is conventional wisdom. Well, women aren't bound by that, meaning that we have access to deeper and more creative ways of solving problems that make things better for more than just ourselves, for the people that work with us, the people that are impacted by us. And when the world wakes up to collaboration, when the world is waking up to emotional intelligence and soon intuition being just as valued as logic, we're going to see women rise. We're already seeing feminine leadership outpacing masculine leadership in studies. And that's just the beginning. Because women entrepreneurs, we care more about freedom than our male counterparts. They care more about power and influence. When women show up on the scene and go, you know what, I am going to kick ass, but I'm going to do it in 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And they break out of hustle culture and they're just rocking it and they're in their full power for 4 hours. And then they're like baking bread on a Saturday. And that's like so much joy for them, or they're horseback riding, or they're doing something that makes them just excited. They're redecorating their house or doing like whatever women are doing. Like, and they're being so multifaceted and so grounded in who they are. The hustle to hustle mindset, which has traditionally been where the masculine resides, just like race because you can, and that lights them up. It's not lighting women up. Women aren't here to race marathons for 20 freaking years with no breaks. That's not lighting us up.
No.
What's lighting us up is coming in, making impact, and getting out and doing the thing that lights and makes us feel fun and alive and free and fluid and creative. And so when women are giving ourselves permission to do that, and I think the online space is going to help, where women can really get paid for their expertise. I think that we're going to see the collapse of traditional education. Colleges are going to be replaced with online education. Being experts because you've actually done it versus you've studied it is going to radically shift things. Yeah. And I think that we're going to see the collective IQ coming together and women getting compensated adequately for their wisdom. And when we do that, we heal our lineage. And so there's just so much power. Our daughters get to see this. And without a question, we stand on the shoulders of all the women that broke ceilings for us so that we could even have this privileged conversation around how do we have freedom 4 hours a day. Like that was not a conversation 100 years ago, 50 years ago, when we were children. It is now, though. And when we do this, we're going to see generations of young girls cruising in going, I get to get paid for my brilliance.
Yeah, and it's not a hobby. And it's not a little thing, and it's not a side, oh, that little thing you're doing or whatever. Yeah.
It's not your shoe money. It's life-changing money that can support your family and maybe at some point give our husbands this gift, which Colleen and I talk a lot about. Like one day I would like to give my husband the gift of like, I'm bringing in enough income that join me over here in this 4-hour workday doing what you're passionate about. Come on over, bud. Because we see middle-aged men that midlife crisis is because they're fucking miserable grinding also. But the world is telling them they have to do it. Like it's been telling us, we're breaking free from it. They're not there yet, but hopefully we'll be able to invite them into this fun side of life soon.
Yeah. I think, and I also think like as women rise, it's not at the cost of the masculine, but it requires the masculine to show up differently.
Yes.
So they're in a space of confusion of how do we be strong men who are taking our, in a non-toxic way. How are we adding to the conversation? Well, there's not a lot of examples out there celebrated of really amazing men who make space for women without having to diminish themselves.
Yeah.
So we're in this, it's like we're all being renegotiated in our roles. Women have to rise and speak and be paid for our genius. We have not, there's wounds for us around that. I've not met a woman who isn't insecure about how she prices herself.
Yeah.
It's like every woman is afraid of how to price and even negotiating. I used to tell any woman that worked for my companies or I was a consultant for is like only 30% of women will ever negotiate a salary.
Yeah.
What? But like men, 95% of them will negotiate. So who's going to get paid more? Like we have work to do around this, but the men also have work to do.
And the conversations have to be had, right? I saw this meme, but it was somebody's story who was like, I came from, not poverty, but not a wealthy family. And so when I got this job in tech, they offer, you know, like I asked for $100,000 and they gave me 120, and I was so proud until I found out everyone else was making 150. And it's because we're not having
Yeah.
these, we haven't in the past. I think the conversations are having now, and you're doing that obviously, and we're trying to create a platform for that. But we have felt shame about money. We have felt shame about asking money. We've been made to feel shameful for asking for more. Like you should be so lucky to get what you get, right? But to your point of like, whatever is shifting in the universe, like we're asking for it now, and we're coming for it. And you better get ready, because we want to get paid. We got bills, we got kids, we got things, we got travel, we got to do stuff. We've got 4 hours in the day we're going to work, because then we got to do the other stuff, right? Like, and I can feel that shift. And I, you know, part of me was like, well, maybe it's just because Cheryl and I have both worked on curating our online, like our social media and such. So that's what we're being feeded. But I feel so validated by you saying like, no, this is happening. This is coming. And it's universal.
You were afraid you were in an echo chamber and it wasn't really happening?
Yeah,
is that kind of what
I'm
like
hearing? I felt like I was like, maybe I'm just making this echo chamber for myself because I need some cheerleaders. I need to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and we may be on the forefront. Paden, you, me, like on the forefront of like, this is what's coming. So maybe it is a little bit of an echo chamber, but then we're all going to stand up on our platforms, Paden, you, me, and be yelling that you guys, this is happening. Join us, please.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. 100%. I love the vision of the matriarchy. And it's so interesting because at first I thought the matriarchy was the inverse of the patriarchy, just like women in all positions of power trickling down. That's not what a matriarchy is. It's women organizing a collective of all genders, all ages, all talents, making respected, like basically validating every individual contribution to the collective and caring about the well-being of all as peers. There's no power over in matriarchy.
Yeah.
Now that I think everyone benefits from. So we're also looking at the collapse of traditional hierarchies. And so systems like the political system are getting pressured right now. People aren't excited about the way things are being trickled down. They aren't excited about the power grabs. We're seeing this in so many different areas that to me, it's like women will rise. And when we do, we will not see what's going on in Gaza because women would never let that happen. I really believe that. I know this isn't like a political space, but it could be anything, wherever there's conflict in the world right now, where babies are being hurt and leveraged for political gain, you would not see that happening if women were in charge.
No.
We would negotiate what Colleen said, a win-win. How do we make this happen? So I feel it. Like, I feel like it's so true and it's coming. And if us speaking that into the world helps to create resonance in the hearts of the listeners and the women listening, and that creates in itself the wave that we need to take it over, like, let's do it.
Like,
and it's not at the cost of men. It's in favor of humanity.
Yeah. Like,
right.
We freaking ride at dawn. Let's go. We're all coming together. Get in the minivan because that's what we're doing. Like, that's what we're doing now. Okay. Like, just like, if we continue to just pull people into our echo chamber, like person by person, then it's no longer an echo chamber. It's just an environment that we've created.
Yes.
I love it. Okay, Paden, I feel like we could go on and on and on and on, but tell people where they can hear more of what you're saying and how they can connect with you, because I'm certain that you have a zillion new fans after today.
Awesome. Well, you can certainly connect with me on TikTok and Instagram are my favorites. It's at Paden Hughes or padenhughes.com. And then I link all the things, the podcast, the book, coaching, anything that feels resonant, my freebies that I'm always dripping out to my email list. I just send people stuff that I've geeked out on that I've had a breakthrough around. And so if that speaks to you, you're welcome to jump into that world.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you are a busy lady and we so appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good one.
You too.
That's a wrap. Thank you for joining us on this journey of laughter, life, and growth.
And remember, you're not alone on this path to success. We're right here with you every step of the way.
Please remember to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's conversation, we'd be thrilled if you would leave us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback means the world to us.
And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends, family, and anyone who could use a good laugh and some practical insight into navigating the challenges and triumphs of our minds, body, soul, and business.
Remember, we're doing this right.